training session that advocates asked for. We have been talking about emotional intelligence before in other presentations, but this is particular to leading teams, and it's particular to difficult conversations, complexity and fragility. And fragility is something that Kenyah has actually written about recently in an article that has been published. So it's close to her heart. Okay, the presentation will be in 4 parts, as we've been doing before with other training sessions. The first part will be about emotional intelligence and leading teams, and we'll be looking at definitions and what we mean by emotional intelligence. Then we're going to be looking at difficult conversations. Part 3 will be complexity and fragility. And then part 4 is that breakout rooms that we talked about, which is an open discussion when you come back from the breakout rooms about some of your strategies and some of your experiences. This is something that Kenyah put in. This is the green text here, which is about possible triggering for some people when we talk about emotional intelligence. And, you know, if you're uncomfortable at any point, please put how you feel in the chat. Okay. Everybody all right with that?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Great stuff. Right, off we go. Right, aims and objectives. This is the aim. These are the aims of the training session. We're going to define what we mean by emotional intelligence, and please do, you know, contribute when you want to. We're going to explore the importance of emotional intelligence and leadership, which is extremely important. There's a noise going on in the background.
Yeah, I was just about to ask that as well. It's some like crackly.
If somebody could mute themselves if they think that noise is going on in their place, if they could. Otherwise, I'll mute you. Okay. Also, what's really, really important is identifying challenges. We all have challenges in the workplace, but as a leader and a neurodivergent leader at that, it can be very challenging because of the environment that you're working in is often very neurotypical, but also it's those difficult conversations anyway faced by any leader. And it's, you know, it's something that Nancy probably talked about, which within double empathy, which is trying to understand from many different lenses why people behave the way they do. And it's developing strategies for effective communication with staff of different abilities. So that's the aims. It's quite a full set of aims. You know, we hope that we will achieve some of it. And the objectives will be just to recognise that there is fragility in all of us and in our relationships as leaders and in teams, to explore and reflect, and to identify as areas of personal growth and consider what you'd like to get out of this presentation. Some of those objectives would be for later on, actually, not within this presentation. It's your journey as a leader, as a neurodivergent leader as well. Okay. So, as a neurodivergent leader, what do we mean by emotional intelligence? And we're just going to discuss that in a minute. But what we'd like you to think about is, what do you know in terms of leadership and in terms of emotional intelligence? What do you know in your lived experience? And where are you now? And you might want to just write that down on a piece of paper, because this is the thread through this presentation to think about. You know, this is the grounding bit. These are the statements and questions to consider as we go through. Okay. All right. Kenyah and I did say that it would be quite good to have different definitions, and the dictionary definition is extremely clinical, of course, and you'd expect that. You know, the skill in perceiving, understanding, and managing emotions and feelings. So the dictionary definition doesn't talk about it from any particular lens, and doesn't talk about emotional intelligence in terms of who we are and who we are dealing with in terms of relationships. Doesn't go into that at all. Of course, it won't, because it's all about describing words. Simply psychology is quite interesting, because obviously, you know, it's taking it a bit further, and, you know, it's starting to talk about how we actually behave in terms of expressing and managing emotions, and how emotional intelligence is absolutely key to that. And being able to, and it goes a bit further than the dictionary. It starts to talk about the emotions of others. But what we're going to talk about here in terms of emotional intelligence is that it's a balance. It's about managing our emotions as a human being. And if we don't understand who we are, we're certainly not going to be able to understand and have empathy for others and manage a situation that could be happening in the workplace. Okay. Right. Let's just get that. Yeah. So we're on to the guru of emotional intelligence, Daniel Goleman. And this is quite a nice visual rather than text, which, you know, I was doing a search of visuals for this presentation, and they all, in the main, derive from Daniel Goleman and what he has to say about emotional intelligence when he started talking about it in 1998. And his
down, according to Mr. Goldman, on what emotional intelligence is about. And it does start with the self-awareness. You know, we would say, know thyself. So before you can support anybody else or even think about how they might be thinking, you know, putting yourself in other people's shoes, you need to have a sense of, you know, where you're coming from. It says honest, sensible, reflective, and be sensitive. This will be for you, about you. Then there's self-regulation, control, or redirect disruptive moods or impulses. Think before acting. And with the self-regulation, it's really about at what point will you hold back anger, or do you, you know, on impulse, just shout back and or say what you think. Motivation, a passion to work for reasons that go beyond money or status, energy, and persistence. Empathy is quite key to emotional intelligence, the ability to understand emotional makeup of others, treat people according to emotional reactions. Social skill, being respectful, objective, perceptive, listening, empathy, and know the issues. Know the issues. Positive force, which is a positive force for change. If we can go on to the next slide. Remember the EDI training that we had that was carefully presented by Jennifer Oford. The summary of that is, given the opportunity with the right environment, an ND, neurodivergent leader, is a transforming asset to an organization. We heard quite a bit about that from Professor Nancy Doyle yesterday. She gave herself as an example. We are inclusive and team-focused, adaptive. We think quickly, we are strategic, have vision, challenge others rather than be challenged.
anything you want to
go on to the next.
Jennifer, because it's your slide. Did you want to add anything, Jennifer? No?
Okay. So when we think about emotional intelligence, where are the opportunities to discover our levels of emotional intelligence? Earlier on, I was asked a question, had I seen all the slides. And I asked the question to Catherine, are you being a leader, manager, or therapist? When it comes to being asked a question, sometimes we have to position ourselves differently. Being asked a question by a colleague is different to being asked a question by a manager. And sometimes if we don't get it right, it can lead to difficult conversations. That's one example. Another example is, depending on where we are in the leadership hierarchy, we might find it given to us our responsibilities in terms of the types of conversations that we have with our peers, as well as our team members. So when we look at communications, it says navigating. Difficult conversations involves emotional intelligence. Where are we at when we're being asked a question? Are we having a bad day? Did we get out of the bed on the wrong side? You know, where are we in that? Managing your own emotions and the emotions of others is quite key as a leader, but it's not something that we get into the job knowing. Sometimes we have to work our way up and we need the training. As we heard from Professor Nancy Doyle yesterday, it really starts with the organization. What are its policies and procedures? What are its values? Does it think of itself as an inclusive organization or exclusive? If it's inclusive, who is it including? Can we go back to the previous slide, please?
I'm finding it difficult, actually.
Oh, okay. So practice, it says collectively working towards equality, diversity, and inclusivity to provide equal opportunities and access for all. In order to do that, we really do need a clear set of values. Again, we heard from Professor Nancy Doyle yesterday, and this is also covered in Daniel Goleman's book about working together and thinking about who's included and who's excluded. So if we're saying we're working together, who are we including in that? In my work as a therapist, when we're working with individuals and organizations, we like to think of the graces. So we look at the geographical background that individual members of the team are coming from. What is their gender? What is their race? What is their religion? What are their abilities? That needs to definitely be covered. What is their age? What is their color? What is their culture? What educational background do they have? And also sex and sexuality is considered as well. And there are many others that we learn about individuals that we need to include. Reflect. Before we do any type of work as leaders, we always need to think about our personal limits. What are we still grappling with from our past, from our childhood, from our time at university? All the conversations we've had, all the interactions we've had with others make us the person that we are. And nobody's perfect, as we constantly hear people say. So we're forever having to reflect on where we're at and where we're going. Self-compassion. And every day, is that something that we show ourselves? How do we show it? What is self-compassion? How do we define it? Have any of us even heard of the term self-compassion? If we're not looking after ourselves, how do we intend to look after others? And then there's the big plan. How to balance self-care with advocacy efforts, ensuring you are not overextending yourself. What is the difference between emotional intelligence and being there to please others all the time? Yes, it is also linked to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Thank you for that, Andrew. Ready to move on to the next slide. managing complexity and fragility. Self-care again. People with different intersectional identities coexist and navigate environments where fragility may manifest. And that's quite a key term, fragility. We are fragile, but how do we show it? How is it demonstrated in our place of work? How do we perceive our fragility and how do we perceive others? And again, what support systems do we have in the organization to help us think about this? Most of the slides we've looked at start with self-care. And it's something we would ask you to think about in the discussion during the breakout. And self-awareness, so self-care and self-awareness, do they go hand in hand? As asked her manager to brief the team so that when she visits her workplace for the first time in months, she's not bombarded with questions about her recovery and about what happened to her. That is such a perfect example, yes. And the same would go for somebody who's gone through a gender realignment, somebody who's gone in to have a baby, and maybe the baby didn't survive. So there's lots of questions about health, about moving on, about bereavement, that within an organization, it will be key to have some procedures around that. And then reflection.
So do you not think it's hard though, because I suppose everybody's an individual, so how one person would deal with the situation, and it's difficult if they put a policy in, because how would that be managed? How would the policy be managed? Because some stuff people would want to share, some stuff people wouldn't want to share. Depends on what relationship, on the size of the organisation. So there's a lot of variables, isn't there, with things like that? Just chucking that in there, but it's really difficult, because I mean, thing is, like, there's a lot of organisations have endless policies, but do they really mean anything if you don't really get to know the people and actually know the team? Because policies are just policies, aren't they? And at the end of the day, they don't necessarily mean anything. They're supposed to be there to protect you, but are they really? Do people really take notice of them?
I hear you. And the example that I have for that is during LGBT month, I took it upon myself to have an interview with a young man who'd gone through quite a number of attacks and issues around their identity. So I took it upon myself to meet with them and ask, from their perspective, how would they want people within the mental health service to treat them? When they come into the service, what questions would they like us to ask them? What information can they share in advance that might limit all the questions that they get? So it was interesting how, and this was videoed and it was shared with the trust. And this young person was saying people need training. So if we had a policy, the policy might just be about helping staff members to reflect on their, from their own perspective, how would they like to be treated? And just saying, there's be emotional intelligence to first think about themselves. What have they gone through recently that they would like some empathy around? Dee, does that answer was that enough on the reflection side?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks very much.
Okay. Then in terms of ways for reflection, some people find it helpful to do individual reflection, and some would prefer group reflection. So if there's been an incident at work or something's about to happen, like we were talking earlier about who's going for the Christmas meal, there could be some reflection on that. How did we enjoy the previous one? What would we like to happen differently or the same for the next meal?
So in what lens would we be looking at reflection? Would it be as a leader or a manager, or what lens are we looking at?
Yes, that's a very interesting question. So it'd be a both and, because there's the self-care, there's the self-reflection, and then there'll be also, yes, the leader. So the leader, depending on the policy, is it an open discussion or is it a closed discussion? So is the leader inclusive or exclusive? Do they make all the decisions, or do they open the way for the team to join in and contribute? Okay, if we can move on to the next slide. So here, if we move on to here, you get an opportunity to think about difficult conversations. Think about the strategies and responses that could help you manage complex situations or difficult conversations. And what resources do you have to assist you to manage difficult conversations? And Catherine will support you in going to breakout rooms.
I am just about to look at the slides to see if there's anything that's been missed. No, okay, right.
Well, sorry, before we go to the breakout rooms, is there anything you would like me to expand on from the slides?
I was just going to suggest, obviously, in terms of your client, and this is quite relevant, having worked with disabled people with a range of disabilities, it's all about the language and how you use it. So kind of like when I worked at BPP, we sponsored the Time to Change campaign. And so when you use the language and having a normal conversation about someone and you actually make them feel at ease, a leader would not start sort of straight away. So what's wrong? Having that conversation, and being open and making someone feel included. So if someone has, had a very challenging time, which could lead to a crisis, kind of having that kind of conversation with them and being non-judgmental, and it's just the tone of someone's voice. So if you're going like that, very passive aggressive, it's not going to help. So how are you doing? Would you like to have a cup of tea? We can go to my office. It's just the language, because I dealt with a student quite a long time ago, and I don't see the student anymore. It's not relevant to my job now, but that student then recovered through having that regular check-in, even if it was just for 10 minutes, having that chat to do with a complex mental health issue. So I do think it's all about the tone and also being that voice and letting their voice be heard rather than you infringing your views on someone. And that's something that I kind of put into the culture at that particular university, having that open mind. So it just brought back memories of that student who unfortunately he moved to Dubai now, but yeah, it just brings back the memories of how I helped him turn his life around.
That's a good point, actually, because tone is really important, isn't it? And we did talk about listening some time ago, and good leaders are listeners, aren't they, as well?
You've also got to trust them. That's the other thing. Trust is the key part, isn't it? Because you need to know that, because sometimes people can go in and they can say the right words. They can even say the right words in the right tone. But if you know that that person still can't be trusted and they're just good at doing the spiel, then it's still not there, is it? It's knowing that they are true. Because like I say, from the work I do, I go to a lot of meetings and events. I see people stand up on stage in quite high up positions and they say all the right things. Then I see them after they've had a few drinks in the bar, and they're a completely different person. And I often think the person in the bar is probably who you really are, whereas the person who's standing up on stage is saying it because that is your job, and you have been told that obviously you've got to say, I'm very inclusive, I've got to say all this stuff. But that's not the real person. So then, would you feel going into an office, would you feel that you could tell them with confidence and trust that actually they really respect you? and they've really got your back, even if they're saying the right things. So to me, I think the fundamental thing is, do I trust this person, or are they genuine? Is what they're saying genuine?
And how would you know that? How would you know that?
I think that's a really difficult question. Yeah, I think it's basically often it's time and watching how they interact. I always say, like what I was taught when I was younger, if anybody's talking about somebody else to you, they're clearly going to be talking about you to somebody else. So basically that's how you can judge. And if they mock one type of person in society, chances are they're going to be mocking several other types of people. So that's normally how you can judge. Where, you know, my other judgment is, if they like animals, you're normally decent. If you don't like animals, I've got serious questions. So normally that's my judgment call. That's how I judge it. Yeah.
So actually, it's interesting. Let's just go around. Well, what does each person think is a key attribute of being a leader? I mean, what you're saying, Becky, is integrity, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
What about anybody else?
Sorry, we're not doing the breakout rooms anymore.
We will in a minute. This is
Okay.
warm up.
Okay.
So, Catherine, I was thinking, to be a good leader, you have to be able to be adaptable,
Okay.
and you have to be able to put your differences aside and actually start from zero, like a neutral position, and listen with fresh ears, and being able to listen again because you get something else from the same conversation. Or asking the same question to the person, you actually get more from it. Yeah, that's what I've just thought of, just off the top of my head to add.
Really good, Alicia. Anybody else?
Informed decision maker.
Good one.
Mhm.
Yes, informed. Good one.
After listening.
Anybody else want
I
to?
would say approachable and friendly, really, to start with, and then it kind of leads to a lot of other things, can lead to people trusting you. It probably means that you have the right tone. You know, you don't just talk the talk, you actually, you're the person who says stuff on stage, and you are that person in, interactions with your colleagues and subordinates, if you want to use that word or something. So yeah, I think approachable and friendly.
That's another good one. Anybody else before we go into the breakout rooms?
I think, Catherine, lead by example. And it might sound a really obvious one, but I've been in jobs where people wouldn't do the lesser jobs. I think you should be, if you're a manager, you should be able to do everything and roll your sleeves up and get into the job as well when there's something difficult going on. I know it sounds like a cliche, but I've been in many jobs, unfortunately, where the leader couldn't do that.
All good points. Anybody else? Maddie, if you're feeling up to it.
Sorry. I'm muting myself. Yeah, I agree with what everyone's actually saying, to be honest. I just believe in a leader. You need to be, the person has to be truthful and think of the bigger picture. I've just worked with some managers who just think about the business, but don't think about the people inside the business. So you got to think about the people, because they're the business. They're actually the people of your business. If that makes sense. And it's about, a lot of people have their own agenda. You can't have your own agenda. If you're a leader, you need to be able to not just have your own agenda. You've got to think about others.
Great. These are super important, all of them. So they're all great leaders. Kenyah, did you want to sort of say anything, to complement what people have said?
No, it's all good input. Yeah. And it just shows that leaders are, they're different. They're not all the same. So the person that can't get down and do the, not hang out, but, work with the team, they feel that they're an eagle. They take the higher, viewpoint, and some leaders feel if they join the team, then they lose sight of, what the team is, what the work is about, what the goals and objectives are. So when they stay a bit removed, they can see more of what's going on and what needs to be changed if any change is needed. And it also goes back to, back in the day, if we think about our ages, way back, some managers felt that they shouldn't even smile at staff. It was like, can't really get involved with you. I need to, there needs to be a boundary. There needs to be a space between us. I can't be seen going out. And then it moved on to, meeting at the bar with the managers because they wanted to really get to know you. And maybe they had an approach that Becky observed, where they think if they get alcohol in you, the real you will show itself. Maybe there was a bit of that, but definitely there were some managers who they couldn't have seen having a cozy relationship with their colleagues.
Okay, thank you, Kenyah. Jennifer, I realise you haven't said anything. Do you want to say anything? No?
No, I'm okay, Catherine.
Okay, all right then. We're going to go into breakout rooms. There's 3 of them. How long do you want to talk for so that I set the time?
Are you asking me or are you asking the?
I'm asking all of you. All of you.
Okay.
7, 8 minutes, I guess.
I suppose, would it be depend on how many breakout rooms have we have we got this breakout session, another breakout session? How long have we got time wise, I suppose, is the question.
This is the only breakout room.
Right.
So are you saying 8 minutes then? Yeah?
That's good with me.
Yeah.
Good for everybody? Right, okay. Right, room 1, Alicia, Kenyah and Jennifer. Room 2 is Dee, Maddie and Rose. And room 3 is Andre, Andrew and Becky, okay?
Yeah, can you just remind us what we just before you put us in, what we're discussing again? Just give us that little thing, because obviously we're it might be just help us remind us what we're discussing.
Thank you.
So we're all thinking it.
Oh, do you want me to put up the slide again?
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
Right, let's just do that.
It's so nice not being the only person that has to ask that. It happens every time.
Well, that's it. I thought this is a safe space. I thought I'm going to ask because I'm sure we're all thinking it.
Yeah, we are, definitely.
Oh, that's good.
I took a picture with my phone, so otherwise I wouldn't remember myself either.
Where are you at as a leader, and where are you at on emotional intelligence? Wasn't that it?
It's thinking about strategies and responses that could help you manage complex situations or difficult conversations. I will share it. And what resources do you have to assist you to manage difficult conversations? Okay, let me just share it.
Yeah, clearly not remembered any of that, so I'm definitely glad you reshared.
Okay, so, right. Can you see that?
Yep. I'm photo.
That's it. So, I mean, you might want in your breakout groups to decide which one you take. Is it strategies or is it resources? Okay. Strategies for managing complex situations and difficult conversations, or what resources? So I would say decide in your group which one you're going to take. Does that sound okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, I'm going to stop the share and I'm going to go to the breakout rooms, and you'll be told when the 8 minutes are up. Okay, I'll be out here if anybody wants to get out of a breakout room.
So that's a strategy for getting out. Just press the button.
Have difficult conversations.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll open the room. Right, so I'm hoping that it's happening, isn't it? Yeah, good. Okay, you're not in a room, Kenyah.
Because it was my sister's birthday today, and I had to do a little thing with her, and make her happy without her even knowing what I'm going through, because it is personal, and it is what's it called, like confidentiality.
Alicia, you're back in the main
Oh,
room.
sorry. Oh my. Okay. Yeah. So I think you've got all of that now. So yeah.
Right. I put in the chat what
Yeah.
you were talking about. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So we've got 3 rooms.
Yeah.
Who wants to feed back?
Alicia, to finish that, do you want to, in Kenya, do you want to say about that? Because I thought that was really good.
Okay.
Yeah. So when we're looking at strategy, we can start with yours, Alicia. I don't want to speak for
Yeah, that's
you.
fine. No, you
But
could. I don't mind.
So without talking about the actual problem, I wonder, are we all back? Because I can only see.
Yeah, we're all back.
All right. So without going into the detail of it, but Alicia was in a particular situation where it's more sort of, is it family and friend oriented?
Yeah.
And yeah, so some people were relying on her to take different positions. And so what we gathered was that there was neutrality. So Alicia was balancing, everyone's trying to balance, people's perspectives in that space and not taking a position. And that helped to pace the situation. It sort of calmed things down a bit, where people were feeling a bit anxious, just because Alicia didn't adopt a position of, I'm going to side with this person or that person, or repeat what other people had said. She adopted a position of neutrality, where she wasn't taking sides but listening. So she exercised listening skills, and she observed body language and emotions. Yeah, and there was a lot of empathy shared as well. And then there was and language. It was a matter of how language was being used that helped. And then other examples was questions. We had examples from myself and Sam, where we looked at the types of strategies that we would use. Sam, do you want to say a bit about the example you gave?
Oh, I'm using my brother's phone. It's Jenny. I forgot though.
Okay. Sorry.
But yeah, so I was saying I was having coaching and came to the point of thinking of trying to treat it like a game or an experiment. But I've got a situation at work, but I couldn't really work out how to do it. So I really love listening to Kenya and thinking of that idea of a question. So rather than quickly jump to an answer or a position, just use a question to find out more and slow it down and understand a bit more about the situation. So yeah, I think that's what we were talking about.
And that came from the example I gave when I said Catherine was asking me where I was and how, had I been looking at the notes, and I wasn't quite sure, so I asked a question. So we were talking about how questions can help as a leader. Not that I was leading over Catherine, but how questions can be helpful. And then I talked about how I like to adopt the position of Columbo. So I do ask questions. I ask lots of questions, and I adopt a one-down position, trying to be curious to get some information.
I was talking from a technical point of view, Kenya. I needed to know when you'd come in and when you had seen the presentation, so that we could work in a collaborative way.
Yeah.
I don't want us to hog the time, but I'm really interested in that one down position against the idea of being like childlike or passive or so it seems really successful and good, but also important not to be perceived that you're doing that other thing. Could we just speak about that for a minute before we move to the other people?
So the one down position is, as a leader, you're wanting to join a conversation with, depending on what the difficult or complex conversation is. So you unpick, so just refresh my memory. I mean, this is what I've heard that went on. You produced a statement. I've read the statement. I just would like to hear your point of view, because I'm not quite clear. So like Columbo always used to say, "It's my boss thinks the information, I'm just doing my response." So I would, as a leader, we've got a value system. The value systems of the organization mention A, B, C, and D. This particular exercise that we're looking at, or this particular issue that's arisen, falls within this area. I wonder if we can both think about this together, because sometimes the person, the member of staff, the team member, might be looking at their manager as knowing it all. So when you adopt the one down position, you're helping the person see that you don't know it all. Let's work at this together. We might be able to arrive at a solution. The same thing when I'm working with clients. I don't know their family, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
The next room.
For our group, obviously everybody else will probably chip in as well. We talked about a range of different things, because obviously you've got 3 chatters in one room, so you can imagine. But at the end, we tried to capture it all from what we'd all been saying, and a lot of it was very much, if you get to know the team as a leader at the different levels, if you get to know the people and the personalities, then if they haven't had enough sleep, if they've got some problems in their personal life, if they are just, some people are a bit more up than others, the language that people use, like use an example of myself, when me and one of my colleagues are talking, we can be both very quite loud, like we're both very northern, and we are very expressive. Somebody else might think it's an argument, or we're being too abrupt or too friendly because not formal enough. Well, actually it's still very formal, it's just a different way of communicating. And I think that if you understand and you get to know people, you know how to communicate with them, and then you know the strategies to use, because some people need things to be very literal, and other people actually need more that friendly approach to actually show that you're relating as a person, rather than I'm up here, you're down there, can we come at it together? So that was how I took a bit from our room, that it was very much know the individual, and from that's the strategy. Once you get to know them, everything else falls into place.
Brilliant. Anybody want to add to that from that room?
Yeah, I nailed it. Yay, go us.
Right, final room then, third room.
Gonna go for it, Rose. You got it written down.
Oh yeah,
Right.
you girls can chip in if I don't get it right. So first of all, Maddie's talked about observing someone's behavior when she wasn't able to get them. They just wouldn't listen. They're not a good listener. So she observed how other people, I think I got this right, Maddie, but do correct me, other people got this person to listen. So this person was obviously selective, and is that correct, Maddie? So you observed,
You are right.
you made notes about how other people got this person to listen.
Yeah.
And then you went through them in order to get that person to do what you need them to do.
Yeah. It's about kind of we talk about, because emotional intelligence is about understanding self-awareness, but about reading other people as well. So my manager, he's one of his managers is quite a selfish person, who thinks about it's just numbers and doesn't know people. So I know people, but then I go to the person he listens to that can change it, so he listens to what I need to be done. But he knows how to talk to my manager, do you know what I mean, in his language than my language, if that makes sense to people.
Yeah.
And
it does.
I thought that resource in relating to that is creativity, using your imagination is the resource, and that was the strategy. And Dee talked about letting a person, well, first of all, getting calm in order being calm in order to keep a lid on heightened emotion in a situation, and letting a person get all of their points across before then addressing one at a time, strategic. And the resources are sort of basic knowledge of psychology, the effect on emotions, on body and mind, of emotions on body and mind. And I just talked about sense of humour, trying to step back from a situation and see where the humour is in something, not necessarily to make it into a comedy show, but to just lighten things up a bit by stepping back and seeing what's funny here when everything's getting a bit too intense.
Creativity is an interesting one. When you talk about creativity and leadership.
I thought it was also a little bit of problem solving there as well, with Maddie's her approach to kind of getting her manager to do what was needed.
Kenyah, do you have a comment on all these discussions?
Yes, and especially the last one, when we're thinking about problems. I remembered Professor Nancy Dole's example, or let's say strategy and using solution focused. There is solution focused therapy, some people call it coaching, and that's where you look to the solutions. So you work with the person or the team to look at what could have been done differently. What is the solution that we want to work towards, as opposed to unpick the problem. So that's one strategy, and then another one is what they call non-violent resistance, and it brings about what do they say? Striking while the iron is cold. So for some of the things I've heard, sometimes instead of trying to address problems straight away, you could maybe write an email to the person, say, "Oh, I understand that this incident happened today," and offer them, if it's something you want to talk about now, or should we make some time to think about this together, or to talk about this together, as opposed to calling them into the office and saying, "Right, which is, we call it old school, which used to happen back in the day. And this all can also bring in what one or two said about knowing the person. So if you know the person, they're not a morning person, so if they come in the morning, they might be a bit grumpy. So that might be one reason why things get heated in the morning. So there might be something to explore together. And then sometimes if the same complex situation keeps arising, then a manager might call in a consultant to think about having group reflection. So it's not just one person that's spoken to, but the whole team. This has happened. We wonder what we just thought we'd all come together to think about. What are your thoughts about this? Any ideas of what we could do differently? What or flow charted? What is actually happening? At what point do we need to think about doing something different? And then that will be taken into other people's way of thinking, the way of doing things, and also their abilities. If we think back to the double empathy that was talked about yesterday, shared yesterday, where somebody, a manager might expect a team member to make eye contact with them, but the team member who might be on the spectrum or have another type of different ability, might not want to make eye contact. So for them, not making eye contact is them showing empathy, whereas the manager or leader might see that as being rude. So it's just thinking about how people do things differently and getting to know the team, how they present, who's a morning person, who's an afternoon person, and also what resources. We talk about reasonable adjustments. What reasonable adjustments do people need in order to either problem solve or think about solutions? What is a solution to somebody who is neurotypical and somebody who is neurodivergent. So it could be something that, you know, brings about a team away day. That's another strategy that some people use. So it's not just focus on an individual. It might be, let's look at the workload. Is it bringing additional pressures on the team, and we all need some time out? That's me.
Thank you. Has anybody got any final comments before we finish?
Like maybe what you just said, Kenya, with the team reflection, kind of meeting. Maybe that's a new way of maybe the old term for that was conflict resolution. Maybe now it's kind of more team reflection. I don't know. Would you say that, or are they two completely different things?
Well, the conflict resolution is a bit hard. I've done both for Waltham Forest. Some years back, there was a big incident, and I was called in as a consultant. So what I did is I wrote a proposal about what I would do, and I I offered counselling to each team member. And in that counselling session or coaching session was to find out how they viewed what was going on. What did they see it as, and what would they want to happen differently? So there was about 17 members of staff, and I spoke with each one. And I also had an independent consultant work alongside. Then eventually, I did a presentation, and then I wrote a report. And this is the key bit. In that report, I made, I think, about 7 or 8 recommendations. And I then divided the team up back into their hierarchical levels and got them to, what's that word? When you put things in order.
Chronological order?
Yeah, that's it. They put, not just chronological, but they prioritize. That's the word. So they prioritize the recommendations based on their needs. So they've termed that conflict resolution using me. And then also within Waltham Forest, working within social services, working with their social workers, we offered, myself and a few other consultants offered reflective practice, group reflective practice. And it wasn't about just one problem. They talked about everything, how they felt around the pandemic, how it had impacted their work, and how they would be thinking about doing things differently. And there was also emotional intelligence as well. So it was on a weekly basis that they had these meetings.
Thank you. Has anybody else got any thoughts before we finish?
I'll probably just add on to what Kenya said with regards to, because just before you said that, I was thinking something similar, but leading more on to what stuck with me from the talk yesterday. And then I have actually been chatting about it today with people and last night with my partner with regards to, it's about interpretation. So last night she did the see an elephant. And then obviously everybody had to, what did you see? Some people saw nothing. And then, but that really got me thinking, and she put the slide up about the interpretation as well, like a short email, or if somebody's quite expressive on it, or they're dominating the call, or they're just enthusiastic, you know. And it was, and that, I think that's the case in every environment, particularly in, well, not just in offices, but in life. It's back, I think, again, it's back to that person's interpretation, because you can both have a conversation and we could all be in a room and we've all taken something different away and could have interpreted that information completely different, and that might not be what the person meant. And I think that happens so much in offices and in conversations where you both had it and you thought you've agreed and people have nodded, so we think we're on the same page, but actually you could be on completely and utterly different pages. And until you actually, which leads back to the point earlier, until you actually get to know the individual, you can't get past that. And what you were saying about prioritizing and seeing it from people's point of view and sitting down one by one. And I imagine, I'm only surmising here, but I bet when you actually sat down with them all, some of the stuff they were saying, it was probably just miscommunication, that they'd interpreted things in different ways. And actually, if they'd have come together and probably chatted it out, things could have been different. Level-headedly chatted it out and not got all let up.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, let's leave it on that. Thank you very much, Kenyah, for all your hard work. Sorry about your technical problems, but we got through. And okay, I'm just going to finish the recording now.